Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you basically how to start animating some of those controllers, making it kind of look realistic in terms of how you can animate just separate controllers compared to animating them all at one time or keyframing all of them at one time, because it's going to be big, I think, in terms of doing this. In other words, whenever you select this root controller right here, that doesn't mean that all of these are keyframed. So let me show you how this is done. So let me just kill all of my animation on this thing. Delete. Now you remember I had my value set to 0. I freeze my rotation. Say I want to start at the beginning. I'm just going to turn all those to 0. Everything is amazingly exactly like I have it. So this is just going to be 50 frames long. I'm going to do this from the side because it's going to be a little easier to demonstrate it. So I can kind of type in a correct value. So the biggest thing to remember is I have 4 controllers right here. And if I move this and I keyframe this with all of these selected, because it will confuse you, all these selected, if I press S here, I've created a keyframe. I've only created a keyframe basically for this controller. I've not created a keyframe there, because see, look, if I've selected that, there's no keyframe there. Now, a way to solve that is to always work from your outliner. So if you move these and you want to keyframe all of these things, you need to shift select all of them. So they're all selected. Now if you press S there, now you have a keyframe for every single one of these controllers there. So in that position. And that can get confusing. So the biggest thing is to always have this outliner open, see what you're selecting, and make sure that that's the piece you want selected. So I'm going to move all these back into place. My keyframe off. So I'm going to have this thing kind of wag a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give it a slinky action, since this will be attached to the body or the earth, however, whatever we're going for here. I'm really just going to kind of like bend this thing to where the tip of it hangs, but kind of give it a nice little arc here. So I'm going to put him into position here. Going to kind of be like my looping. Now, if you don't like the way things are bending here, and we can talk about this later, that is to do with the painting of the weights. I think I talked about that a little bit in our other one. You bring up your box here, and you can start painting weights, what's affecting what. And this is why naming the controllers is important, because right now, everything in the white is being affected by spline 1. And you'll notice it's kind of a slow fade. That's because you can kind of value paint vertexes to affect this. In other words, if you bend your elbow, you're going to be stretching some of the skin right there at the elbow, and you're going to be stretching some of the skin that's on your forearm, in other words. Obviously, what's attached to your body is going to be affected by that, so it's kind of like you think in terms of like your elbow bending. What is the middle of your forearm? What is that affecting? Well, that's affecting all the skin on your forearm. It's not affecting your elbow. So you think in terms of weight, and you can kind of go about doing this by paintings. You know, like right now I'm painting more weights to be affected by that weight right there. So that's why it's looking all jaggedy and everything. So I'll undo that. Just say if I went to this spline 4 right here and I wanted to kind of alleviate some of this right here, could probably, actually spline 3, I want it to crank your value down a little bit more. Maybe, yeah. Maybe I need to paint all the way to that. And like I said, we'll get into more of this whenever if you're rigging up something with a lot of skin. I usually stick to like robots and stuff for beginners, because you don't really have to worry about a lot of this. You can just see how the mechanics work of the rigging. So, but if you see something really bending, you can go in there and paint weights against it. Plus, you can actually go in there and type in values of these vertexes, 0%. You can number values instead of painting it, which is sometimes even easier. So right now I have it in this position. I'm going back to my controllers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 4 of these, and I'm going to keyframe it S right there. So I'm going to make this a looping animation. So basically I want it to end up in that position too. So I'm going to go to my frame 50 and press S here. I'm going to go to my 25, and I'm basically going to reverse this position on the other side. So that's 54, 42. You can either write these values down or not. So 40, 83, 42, 83. I'm just going to negative this one. See, what I'm doing is I'm just basically giving it the exact reverse, which you can kind of position these if you want to. But the main thing is I've got to animate all positions of these things. So I'm going to select all of these right here and press S. So now I have pretty not bad. I mean, this doesn't look very organic, real, I guess. If this was a tail of sorts, it looks more like a tube. And a lot of too that can be solved with thinking further. Was there enough divisions in this geometry? Do I need to give it some more divisions so whenever it binds, it has more movement? It has more room for movement in there. Some tricks you can do, let's do this. You can give it like an overlapping style. You can kind of move these keyframes out a little bit to be a little later. So in other words, if you took these two, like I've selected the controller 3, controller 4, I'm going to move them out to about right there maybe, so that they're kind of weighing on this keyframe a little bit more. And then I'll take this one and I'll move it even further, about right there. So now that keyframe is there, that keyframe is on 5, and this one is on 8. See what that looks like. Oh yeah. Alright, looks better going up. So let's do this on the other side. So I want to take these 2 values here, or positions, these keyframes, and I'm just going to move them. Or I'm trying to select that, but it's not letting me. So that one's not on the 25, it's basically on 27. And I want to move this one out even further. There it goes. I don't know why it was. So like, oh yeah, I got more of a whip action kind of going on. So see the way you can kind of play these keyframes simply from moving them, kind of moving them around and giving them more realistic whip action compared to what I had before, just by moving the keyframes around. And you can kind of stretch these out if you wanted to move them around even more. Let's see. There we go. Looking pretty good the way it kind of whips back right there. What that looks like on this right here. Yeah, not too bad. So the big takeaway from this, knowing that whenever you select and you see all these selected, that is not necessarily mean that you're going to be keyframing them things. Now I will show you further moving on a way to kind of add, I always add a shelf tab up here with some keyable frames to where it's going to select all of them at one time, and that's kind of advanced in terms of you really need to know what you're doing in terms of okay, well, I'm going to select all of them at one time now. So, but from pose to pose, yeah, that's awesome. But in betweens, this is when it gets tricky. And you remember us talking about the in betweens of animation. That's whenever you need to kind of go in and separately select these different controllers to start keyframing them. So let's see what you can come up with. Practice it, make you a good little tail whip there, and see what happens. And we'll talk more about the painting skin weights and the inverse kinematics and stuff like that going on. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.